All right. So I'm going to start another Charles Fort one. It's the second one, I think, I think he's got five. This is New Lands by Fort, 1923. You don't know who he is. Look him up. Part one. One. Lands in the sky. That they are nearby. That they do not move. I take for a principle that all being is the infinitely serial, and that whatever has been will, with differences of particulars, be again. The last quarter of the 15th century, land to the west. This first quarter of the 20th century, we shall have revelations. There will be data. There will be many. Behind this book, unpublished collectively or held as constituting its reserve forces, there are other hundreds of data, but independently I take for a principle that all existence is a flux and a reflux by which periods of expansion follow periods of contraction. That few men can even think widely when times are narrow times, but that human constrictions cannot repress extensions of thoughts and lives and enterprise and dominion when times are wider times. So then that the pageantry of foreign coasts that was revealed behind blank horizons after the year 1492 cannot be, in the course of development, the only astounding denial of seeming vacancy. That the spirit or the animation and the stimulations and the needs of the 15th century are all appearing again, and that requital may appear again. Aftermath of war, as in the year 1492, demands for readjustments. Crowded and restless populations, revolts against limitations, intolerable restrictions against emigrations. The young man is no longer urged or is no longer much inclined to go westward. He will or must go somewhere. If directions alone no longer invite him, he may hear invitation in dimensions. There are many persons who have not investigated for themselves, who think that both poles of this earth have been discovered. There are too many women traveling luxuriously in darkest Africa. Eskimos of Disco, Greenland, are publishing a newspaper. There must be outlet or there will be explosion. Outlet and invitation are and opportunity. San Salvadors of the sky, a Plymouth rock that hangs in the heavens of Servia, a foreign coast from which storms have brought materials to the city of Birmingham, England. On the mentally freezing or dying will tighten their prohibitions, and the chill of their censorships will contract to extinction our lives, which without sin represent matter deprived of motion. Their ideal is death, or approximate death, warmed over occasionally only enough to fringe with uniform, decorous icicles from which there will be no escape. If, for the living and sinful and adventurous, there be not San Salvador somewhere else, a Plymouth rock of reverse significance, coasts of sky continents. But every consciousness that we have of needs and all hosts, departments, and subdivisions of data that indicate the possible requital of needs are opposed, not by orthodoxy of common Puritans, but by the Puritans of science and their austere, disheartening, dried, or frozen orthodoxy. Islands of Space, see Science American volume, this and P that accounts from the reprisal of the British Association for the Ad of Science, Nature, etc. Except for an occasional lapse, our sources of data will not be sneered at. As to our interpretations, I consider them myself more as suggestions and gropings and stimuli, islands of space, and the rivers and the oceans of an extra geography. Stay and let salvation damn you, or straddle an auroral beam and paddle from Regal to Betelgeuse. If there be no accepting that there are such rivers and oceans beyond this earth, stay and travel up steamships with schedules that can be depended upon, food so well cooked and well served, comfort looked after so carefully, or someday board the thing that was seen over the city of Marcellus, August 19th, 1887, and ride on that, bearing down upon the moon, giving up for lost, escaping collision by the swirl of a current that was never heard of before. There are or there are not nearby cities of foreign existences. They have or they have not been seen by reflection in the skies of Sweden and Alaska, as one will. Whether acceptable or too preposterous to be thought of, our data are of rabbles of living things that have been seen in the sky, also of processions of military beings, monsters that live in the sky and die in the sky and spatter this earth with their red life fluids, ships from other worlds that have been seen by millions of the inhabitants of this earth exploring. Night after night in the sky of France, England, New England, and Canada, signals from the moon, which, according to notable identifications, may not be so far from this earth as New York is from London, definitely reported and, in some instances, multitudinously witnessed events that have been disregarded by our opposition, a scientific priestcraft. Thou shalt not is crystallized in its frozen textbooks. I have data upon data upon data of new lands that are not far away. I hold out expectations in the materials of new hopes and new despairs and new triumphs and new tragedies. I hold out my hands to point to the sky. There is a hierarchy that utters me manacles. Think. There is a dominant force that pronounces prisons that have dogmas for walls for such thoughts. It binds its formulas around all attempting extensions. But sounds have been heard in the sky. They have been heard, and it is not possible to destroy the records of them. They have been heard. In the repetitions and regularities of series and intervals, we shall recognize perhaps interchangeable language. Columns of clouds, different colored by sunset, have vibrated to the artillery of other worlds like the strings of a cosmic harp. And I conceive of no buzzing of insects that can forever divert attention from the dramatic reverberations. Language has shone upon the dark parts of the moon, luminous exclamations that have fluttered in the lunar crater Copernicus, the eloquence of the starlight like in Aristarchus, hymns that have been chanted in lights and shades upon Lynn, the wilder, luminous music of Plato. But not a sound that has been heard in the sky, not a thing that has fallen from the sky, not a thing that should not be, but that has nevertheless been seen in the sky, can we, with any sense of freedom, investigate, until first we find out about the incubus that, in the past, has suffocated even speculation. I find out for myself. Anyone who cares to may find out with me. A ship from a foreign world does or does not sail in the sky of this earth. It is in accordance with observations by hundreds of thousands of witnesses that this event has taken place. And if the time be when aeronautics upon this earth is of small development, that is an important circumstance to consider. But there is suffocation upon the whole occurrence in every one of its circumstances. Nobody can give good attention to the data if, diverting his mind in consciousness, altogether respectful of the scientists who say that there are no physical worlds except planets millions of miles away, distances that conceivable vessels could not traverse. I should like to let loose in an opening bombardment the data of the little black stones of Birmingham, which time after time in a period of 11 years fell obviously from a fixed point in the sky, but such a release now would be wasted. It will have to be prepared for. Now each one would say to himself that there are no such fixed points in the sky. Why not? Because astronomers say that there are not. But there is something else that is implied. Implied is the general supposition that the science of astronomy represents all that is most accurate, most exacting, painstaking, semi-religious in human thought, and is therefore authoritative. Anybody who has not been through what I've been through in investigating this subject would ask what are the bases and what is the consistency of the science of astronomy. The miserable, though at times amusing, confusions of thought that I may in this field of supposed research word my inquiry differently. What of dignity or even of decency is in it? Phantom dogmas with their tails clutching at vacancies are coiled around our data. Serpents of pseudo-thought are stifling history. They are squeezing thou shalt not upon development, new lands, and the horrors and lights, explosions and music of them. Rabbles and of hellhounds and the march of military angels. But they are promised lands, and first must we traverse a desert. There is ahead of us a waste of parallaxes and spectrograms and triangulations. It may be weary going through a waste of astronomic determinations, but that depends. If out of our dreary academic zenith shower betrayals of frailty, folly, and falsification, they will be manna to our malices. Our sterile demonstrations be worn by our cheerful cynicisms into delicious little lies, blossoms and fruits of unexpected oases. Rocks to strike with our suspicions and the gush of exposures foaming with new implications, tyrants, dragons, giants, and if all be dispatched with the skill and the might and the triumph over awful odds of the hero who himself tells his story, I hear three yells from hitherto undiscovered grotesque critter at the very entrance of the desert.